What is up? I wanted to show you how I made my slab flattening jig out of a small amount of 3/4 inch plywood, some wood glue, and some threaded inserts. It's a really quick build, it shouldn't take you very long, and even with a limited tool set you can knock this out quick. It's made out of 7 pieces of wood, held together with some glue, and like I said, some threaded inserts. One thing you will need to know is that you do need an already perfectly flat reference top to use this. If you don't have that, you can check out my video on how I made mine. If you do have that, this will be perfect for you. Check it out.
As with any project, the first step is to break down your wood. The first piece I'll cut out is the platform that the router will slide along during the slab flattening process. You can see an image of it here on the bottom left-hand corner that I've taken out of the plans. The image in the corner also has the cutout for where the bit will go in during the slab flattening process. We'll get into that later on. Another very important fact to take into consideration is that the platform needs to be about a 1/16 of an inch wider than your router's base. I have a Bosch 1617, which is 6.5 inches wide, so this is just over that width. Another thing to keep in mind is that I made my flattening jig 4 feet long, so I was able to cut all of this out of one sheet of plywood across the width of it, because they're exactly 4 feet wide. Here I'm cutting out the long rails. I set my fence to 2 inches wide, but when you make yours, you should set yours to 3 inches wide. I've reflected that in the plans. Also, I cut my long rails at a different time than when I cut my short rails, so I suggest you keep your fence at the same width and cut them all at the same time. With the rails cut, you'll want to start the markup for the cutout that the bit travels along. In the plans, I've included the dimensions that you'll want to make your cutout if you have a Bosch 1617. If you don't have the same router as me and can't use the markup in the plans, all you need to do is make the cutout 1/4 of an inch wider than the opening in your base plate. And with the dimensions figured out, I took the lines all the way down the length of the board. I used the long runners that I cut out on the table saw to elevate the platform above my worktop. This allowed me to use a jigsaw to cut out the cutout. I used a drill bit that was slightly larger than the jigsaw blade I was going to use to drill 4 corners on the inside of the markups for the cutout. This allowed me to get the jigsaw blade in there easy and get my cuts going. And here's a fun little knowledge nugget about me. I hate using a jigsaw. In fact, I'm going to not show you the rest of me using it, and you're just going to have to trust that I use a jigsaw to cut this cutout. See? There it is. I told you I'd do it. Now onto the fun stuff. So I used wood glue to attach the long rail to the platform. The wood glue is stronger than wood itself, so this is going to make for a very rigid and strong joint. As you can see here, my plan was to use parallel clamps down the length of the sled for this glue up. Obviously, in hindsight, it's not going to work. With the cutout in place, the clamping force was causing the plywood to buckle down. It's obvious now. So what I had to do was remove the 2 middle parallel clamps and use F clamps to continue with the glue up. Remember that third 3-inch strip we cut out on the table saw? This is it right here. We're cutting it down into 2 8-inch long strips. These will be the small rails on the ends of the jig. Without these, you'd slide your router right off the edge of the jig and it would land on the ground, destroying the tool. To attach the short rails, I used wood glue, specifically Titebond Speed Set. This isn't sponsored or anything, it's just really great for shop projects. This stuff sets up really quick and it's dry in about 15 minutes. I highly recommend it for this project, and any shop projects really. And here I am gluing on the other short rail. It's exactly like I did with the other short rail, but instead of it being that short rail, it's this short rail. If you think these jokes are too dry, I get it. I don't like them either. I don't find it funny. Next was to cut out the runners. The runners are the vertical pieces that the platform rides along to allow it to slide over the slabs while I'm doing the flattening process. I wanted these to be 3 inches tall, so I cut these 3 inches wide. I didn't have any idea how long I wanted them, so I made them oversized, and I'd figure out the length later on in the process. We'll get into that part next. As I was cutting the runners down to length, there was something caught in my ductwork, and it broke free and started traveling down my ducting. You can see me following it here, and right here is where it hit my impeller and my dust collector. Not really great. Moving on. I decided to make the runners 15 inches long. So you'll need to get 2 runners that are 3 inches tall and 15 inches long. Pretty simple, straightforward cut. To attach the runners to the platform, I'm using threaded inserts like I mentioned earlier. To find where I want those holes to be for the threaded inserts, I found the center of the platform and I went out 2 inches in both directions. That way I could find the center of the runners and then go 2 inches out from there and drill the holes through. And that's what I'm doing here. I found center on the 15-inch long stick, which is 7.5 inches, and then I went 2 inches out from each side. Super simple. The threaded inserts have a spot on the top of them that if you don't create a recess, they will protrude above the top of the plywood. And that's what I'm doing here, is drilling out a recess for them. I'm using a 1/2 inch bit, but I recommend you use a 5/8 inch bit. I do that on the next ones, and it makes it much easier. And since these are 3/8 threaded inserts, I used a 3/8 drill bit to drill down into the plywood surface for them to set into. Real simple. These are real easy to use. They're basically a big screw with a hollow cavity for a bolt to go into. They work awesome. They're super handy around the shop and for many furniture applications. So for the drill outs from the platform to the runners, it's basically the same operation. But instead of it being for a threaded insert, it's for a bolt. So you're going to want to make a recess for the head to lie in, and you're going to want to make a hole for the bolt shaft to travel through. Same thing. 5/8 Forstner bit for the recess, 3/8 drill bit for the hole all the way through. Super simple. With the holes in place, I was able to set the bolts into the threaded inserts and attach the runners to the platform. With the jig essentially done, all I wanted to do now was sand the thing down so it was nice to the touch and get some sort of lubricant on it so that the router would slide easy across the platform and so that the runners would slide easily across my outfeed table. So the lubricant I'm using to keep this thing sliding nice and moving easy is WD-40's Specialist Silicone Spray. This stuff was recommended to me by some folks on Instagram. I haven't used it very long term, so I don't know that I recommend it, but so far it has been very good. I don't know that it's any better or worse than paste wax. If you properly apply paste wax, let it dry, and buff it off, that stuff's super smooth and it lasts a really long time. So I can't say that which one's better or worse, but I will say this was very easy to apply and it's worked great for me. As I said earlier, and as you can see here by this empirical scientific testing, this thing slides really nice, and I'm really happy with it. It's worked out really well. Check this out. This jig has worked out perfect for me. It's giving me the opportunity to flatten all the slabs I have in my side yard, and it's done it really well. I've since flattened this entire slab since I've built this, and there was no sagging, no uneven markings, and it came out perfectly flat. I'm super happy with this, and I hope that you will be too. I hope you found this video to be helpful, and if you did, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. Also, if you have any questions, please let me know down below in the comment section. And like I said, I did make plans for this build, so if you're a newer woodworker and like to have a slab flattening jig, plans are available on my website, and there's a link below to that in the description. As usual, I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for watching.